Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Amplify Our Voices project. This is our first official interview being posted here, and as we're doing all of these interviews via Zoom call, there are a few little hiccups here and there. So try to ignore my kind of glitchy video and focus on what Kwabi has to say. We're really grateful for his time and everything that he had to share with us. This interview is going to start off with Kwabi introducing himself, so let's get started.
Yeah, so my name is Kwabi, and I started an organization called the Peace Bus here in Tacoma, Washington. It is a local humanitarian aid organization. So many times people have this idea of humanitarian aid being someplace far off, Southeast Asia or Africa, which is humanitarian aid. But people need help right here in Tacoma, in our hometown. So I've been using this vehicle. It's a Mitsubishi 1988 van, and I've been driving around my community, giving out socks and blankets to people in need. And just recently, I've been giving out cereal, that's right, breakfast, to kids and families who are being affected by the coronavirus because schools are closed. A lot of kids aren't able to get their breakfast, so I've been delivering breakfast to them. And so that's what the Peace Bus is about. We are about trying to understand what peace really is and then putting it into action.
That is amazing. I've been following the Peace Bus a little bit online, and I just see like everything that you're doing. It's just really impactful, and it's really helpful to the kids who, don't necessarily get that with schools being closed right now. Yeah, I love that you are doing that.
Yeah, it's been cool. It's been cool to serve, I mean, I feel like anyone, okay, we want to talk about like humanitarians, people becoming a humanitarian, which is essentially one who seeks the betterment of humankind. So you take your skills and you try to figure out a way how you can use those skills to help others. And I feel that every single person on the planet can do this. So
Yeah.
it's really nothing too special. Anyone, if you really think about it, not to go on a rant, but like, okay, so I'm taking cereal and I'm going to people's houses and delivering it. Like anyone can really do that. You get your minivan or your car, you go to the store and maybe you buy, I don't know, like 20 Lunchables. And throughout the month, you give out a couple of Lunchables to people on the street. If everyone were to do that in Tacoma, there'd be no one hungry in Tacoma.
That is so true. That is so true. Well, I would like to introduce kind of what we've been talking about a little bit with the Amplify Your Voices project has been a lot about how people who identify as Black or multiracial Black, how they've been feeling during this time of the 2020 uprisings, how they've been feeling about the whole situation with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor. And so I want to ask you, Kwabi, like, how is what's happening in our country right now impacting you, impacting your vision for the Peace Bus? What does being Black in 2020 mean to you?
Well, to respond to the uprising and the protests that are recently happening right now, when George Floyd was killed, my initial response was to vent and to sit back and really reflect on what that meant to me. Usually when it comes to the media, what I do is something will happen and I'm like, whoa, that happened. I sit back and I look at it and I wait maybe a week or two to figure out everything that happened, what's going on, to make sure that I get all the information. And even after that, it takes me a while to make an understanding of what happened and then how I can help or how can I do something, right?
Right.
It was like, I want to say a week and a half before I said anything. Because, I was trying to rationalize in my brain, like, did this really happen? Like, granted, It's been happening years and years and years. Pretty much the dehumanization of people of color, especially African Americans. But to see so many people, we've never seen what's going on with people from different races, different ethnic groups, different orientations coming together to rally behind African Americans. Like, what? It's really amazing. So I made a public statement on Facebook about my thoughts as far as, I called it viable solutions. So I'm not the kind of person, you know, yes, we need people to be vocal about what the atrocities that are happening. The way my brain works is like, okay, we have crazy things, these horrible things that are happening towards African Americans that have been happening over years. It seems as if this current movement is making a stride towards doing something to actually fix this situation in a way, try to dismantle the institution of racism. What do I think are viable solutions that can help to aid in the dismantling of this institution that brings dehumanization? And I came up with this idea, and I know that this has been it's been trying to implement around the country, and that is cultural competency training for all police officers in all districts, all these different things, so that the community and the police officers, they can come together and work together to try to figure out how they're going to get along and dismantle this institution of racism that's within the police, right?
Right.
So what I did was, I said this video, I posted this video, and I left the comments open for African Americans in my community to post their ideas of what they thought could help. And no one responded. No one said anything, right? No one said anything. And there was white folks on there that were saying, you know, like, we're waiting to hear, like, what do you guys think are some solutions? And no one said anything. And so I called my brother and I was like, dude, this is kind of like, I made this post. And it was interesting because I wasn't planning on making a post so recent. I wanted to take a couple more weeks to really gather my thoughts, my composure, to be able to say what I need to say. But I was getting messages from people being like, hey, we see you as a leader in the community, you need to say something now. And when I came across, you know, I said what I thought were viable solutions. And my brother was like, well, I don't think this is for African Americans to come up with the solutions now. I think that, this is him speaking, by the way. He says that he thought that white folks, the problem is with white folks and with white Americans, and they're gonna have to figure out what they need to do in order to fix themselves. Which I you know, I was thinking about it because, you know, like the civil rights movement in the 60s, I mean, that was all black ran. That was all,
right.
You know, that's who was leading it. But now it's a mixture of everybody leading it. To be honest, I don't know. It's hard to make of it. It's really hard to make of it. Like, what will this bring? You know, and I've seen like these posts with people saying that, you know, this, like, what has happened since the protests have happened, and they have a list of all these different things, like legislation being overturned and whatnot. And I think that's a step in the right direction. I personally think that it really is going to begin with educational reform so that everyone, all kids, can understand the true African American experience. Because once you understand that, then you have no choice but to act and to work on the betterment of African Americans. Because a real big stance with the Peace Bus, the biggest stance, one of the biggest things we're about is creating a world where every human being is able to reach their potential. And in doing so, we create a world where we increase innovation. We're going to have a more equal world. But I don't think people understand, by holding back their African American brothers and sisters, they're holding back progress for humanity, right? Think about like the very small percentage. What's up?
Did I lose you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, there you go. Okay. I lost you when you were talking about, let me go back. Hold on. Try to go back to what your most recent point was in that.
Yeah. I was talking about the 60s and how it was African American ran, like,
yeah,
and led. And it's it's interesting because now in this new movement, it's a mosh posh of a lot of different people moving for the betterment of African Americans. And we've seen online these posts with all these different legislations being overturned because of the protests, which is awesome. And I believe it's a step in the right direction. But I really believe that the beginning of it, the genesis of dismantling racism, will come in education reform. And what that looks like is for kids to understand the actual African American experience. Because once you understand that, what really has happened in history, the story that hasn't been told, once you understand that, then you have no choice but to act. There's been so many atrocities, so much dehumanization of people of color. Around the world, there's this essence of colorism. The darker you are, the worse off, more poverty, more hunger, all these different things that have been, permeated throughout society. But really, I think, and I was saying that the Peace Bus is really big on this in the essence of allowing everyone, creating a world where everyone is able to reach their potential. Because yes, we should dismantle racism because it's the right thing to do, obviously. But for those who just say you don't care about Black people, which you should, but say you just don't really care about social justice, let's take social justice out of it. We need to be working towards the betterment of everyone so that we can create the innovations and the inventions and the progress we need as human beings. Think about the small percentage of people who have the ways and means in order to reach their potential and how they're working for the solutions of the world. What if everyone were able to have this ability? So what I'm getting at is, like, say we need the cure for cancer. We obviously need the cure for cancer. The cure for cancer is in a 5-year-old kid living in a third world country in Kenya, like that is in Kenya or something like that. What I'm getting at is there's so much unlocked potential because of racism, because of the institution of poverty, because of the institution of hunger, which is all violence. All of it's violence. And that when we dismantle these, we're going to create a better world for every single human being, no matter if you're white, Black, whatever you are. So I think that's something that needs to be taught. There's this book called Why Nations Fail. Why Nations Fail. And it's a book I read maybe like 10 years ago, and it changed my life. And basically, it's a book that explains why third world countries are third world countries and why first world countries are first world countries. And a lot of the third world countries are like that because of this thing called extractive institutions, right? Things that are put in place in order to limit little people. I use that in terms of little people, like people who are dealing with destitution, people who are maybe lower to middle class, from gaining the resources they need in order to become high class or become successful or reach their potential. And how a lot of those are put in place in third world countries, and how first world countries are more inclusive and have more institutions in place to help people. And those are called inclusive institutions, like free education for everyone. There are countries where free education is not a thing. And so people who want to learn and gain that potential, they can't. But check this out. Even with having education for everyone, what if education was equal for everyone in America? What if, it didn't matter where you were born or where you grew up, you would get the same education in one place as another place, and it would be good quality education? How many doctors we would have working, no matter what color they are, what race or religion or orientation, that they can help towards the betterment of the world. And we're hurting each other every single time we put a barrier in place that prevents that individual from reaching their potential, and racism is one of those barriers.
Yeah. Man, that is such, that just partially just blew my mind. You're so right that if we just remove, and it sounds, when you break it down, it sounds so simple, right? Removing that barrier, which is racism. And that is what's blocking an entire people group, especially here in the US, but also everywhere, like you were saying with colorism. Just removing that barrier would unlock so much to make our country better. On top of that, we had these murders back to back that really rocked the African American community, the Black community, and a lot of communities of color. So I guess my question is like, how have those things affected you? How have you been personally feeling about how all those things have collided in 2020?
Yeah. Well, as far as COVID is concerned, my whole direction of my company was shifted. So in
Mm-hmm.
March, I was going to have the premiere of my TV show. You probably see it right
That's
there.
right.
I've
Yeah.
yeah. So I've created a TV show. The pilot episode is completely shot and finished. It's a TV show to educate kids on homelessness, poverty, mass incarceration, and how they can help with the environment. Has puppets in it. It's kind of cool. And I was gonna have the premiere in March 22nd or 17th. It was gonna happen in March. It was gonna happen in March, and COVID hit, and I had to cancel the whole thing. Want to make sure that kids are safe, that they're healthy. So it was a no-brainer. It's gonna be a wrap. We'll postpone it for later. And then consequently, I was sort of at a loss of like, okay, so what does the Peace Bus do now? Like, what do we do in the midst of all this craziness? But the Peace Bus, along with it being a TV show, it's equally a humanitarian aid organization. So I was like, okay, how can I help with the bus to serve my community? And that weekend where I canceled the premiere of the show, I was scrolling through the News Tribune website, and I was looking at the articles, seeing what people are saying about COVID. I was like, oh my God, that's horrible. Like, this is crazy.
Yeah.
And I came across an article talking about families, that many families that rely on the school system for food, that they wouldn't be able to, some of these families wouldn't be able to get to the designated areas where the Tacoma School District was giving them breakfast and lunch. So I thought, okay, well, what if I could deliver food to them and take food to these families? And I thought about doing Lunchables, but then I thought, well, I don't think I have the right permits to transfer perishable items. Like, I'm not a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't go with that. And then I went with cereal. Because I was like, okay, like cereal, it's double bagged. Like, you have the box, you have the bag inside, less contaminant for it, COVID. It's very clean,
Right.
safe, it's healthy. And so I went with that and started, I announced that I'd be delivering cereal to families in need in Tacoma, and the whole thing blew up. King 5 News came to my house. They interviewed me about it. And then that even made it bigger. And so for the last, oh gosh, it's been like 3 months since COVID really started. Yeah, I've been delivering cereal almost just about every morning to families. Yeah, it's been crazy. It's been crazy. It's been a lot. It's been crazy though. It's been an honor to serve my community. But yeah, so I've been doing that. And now since the protests have been started, and we're in the midst of this social change that's in the atmosphere. When I made my statement on Facebook of what I felt, then King 5 News hit me up again. They're like, hey, we like what you had to say. We want to put you on TV so you can say it again. And I was like, for real? And so that happened, and then that got bigger, and then I've been asked to speak at different rallies and stuff. I hadn't been to a rally before that time, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Yes, I think a lot of people think the same way I do. I'm solution based in my thinking of how we
Mm-hmm.
can come together to defeat racism.
Yeah.
And it's doable. It's doable, but it's going to come the same institutions, the same way of life and thinking that help to have racism be a problem till today. We're gonna have to use those same dynamics in taking it out of the psyche of ourselves and in our society. It's gonna have to be planned. There must be strategic implementation of actions put in place in order to dismantle racism. It can't just be like hopes and prayers, like we hope that people will come together and learn from their ways. Like, it can't be that. There has to be legislation written up, passed through. There has to be a revitalization of our education and a revitalization of our law enforcement.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree 100%. I think it's really not just admirable, but just kind of like I have a lot of respect for people who, when this kind of in this craziness that we are calling 2020 has happened, I have a lot of respect for the people who have utilized it to spur them onward and forward and to spur them towards change.
Mm.
Um, because I think a lot of people are stuck. And I can preface this with, I think a lot of people in the white communities are in that space of like, what do I do? How do I do it in a way that is not too uncomfortable for me, or that's appropriate, that everyone sees as a good thing, that all the communities see as a good thing. And then I think there are a lot of people in like communities of color who are either like, I'm feeling really hopeless, I'm feeling really frustrated by what's going on, and it makes it harder to see some of the good things that have passed, like some of the legislation that has passed, and some of the ways that communities are generally coming together. And I don't fault anyone who feels that way, because that was me in the beginning too. Like, it was just like, this is dismal.
Mhm.
But then there's also this moment, I think, that can happen when people see a little bit of hope. And that little bit of hope is what ignites kind of that spurring on, like you said, like taking time to process what's happening. And for some people, that's a longer process. And then being like, okay, now I have some hope, and now I'm going to do something about it. And so I guess my next question would be, what would you say to the kids who are hearing about everything that's going on, who maybe are scared or don't necessarily see a lot of that hope? What are something that you would say to some kids who are seeing what's going on right now?
Yeah, I would love to send a message to the children. This is not a time for fear. We need you guys. We need you guys because us adults don't have all the solutions. So we're
Mm-hmm.
going to need you guys to work together, to talk to each other, to have conversations about race, very tough conversations, to open up a dialogue for that, because it's much needed. Also, for children to hold each other accountable. You have a friend that's struggling, going through something difficult, that that you would help them and help them through. You pick up their hand and hold them by the hand and show them through. Or that if you see a friend, maybe not a friend, maybe it's just a kid, and they're being bullied or harassed because of their skin color, that you would speak up and do something, tell somebody about it, because that's what we need right now. We need
Yeah.
people to speak up, and if you guys do it, then you're going to be creating a better world than the one we're living in now. Because the problems that we're having now stem from people not speaking up, not enough people. Someone saw someone being harassed and hurt because of the color of their skin, and no one did anything. That's why we're in the predicament we are in now. Someone one day said a lie, and
Mm-hmm.
no one corrected them. So it's going to be up to you guys, to create this essence of anti-racism and make it a fabric of our society, and weave it into the fabric of our society.
Yeah, that's good. Yes, the future is not just ours as adults, it is theirs as our future. They are our future. And yeah, I love that. Thank you so much, Kwabi. Is there anything else that you would specifically like to say or touch on during this time of interviewing?
Hmm. Yeah, I really believe that educational reform, and we're really gonna have to look at what, like, in the essence of racism. Yes, that needs to be something that's directly looked at and implemented on in our education system, and how we're gonna go about teaching that to kids, which is really important. Overall education, we're gonna have to figure out a way to offer good quality education for all kids. It's just, if we're looking for progress in the United States, if we're looking for progress in the world that we're living in, every kid deserves a good education, point blank.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess that's what I gotta say.
Thank you so much, Kwabi, for joining us today on the Amplify Our Voices project. Guys, if you would like to know more about the Peace Bus, I'm going to post some links with this video so you can find it, whether this is posted on YouTube, you can find it on YouTube down in the description. And if it's posted on labellajourneys.com, you can also find it down in the description. Thank you so much for joining us, Kwabi, and
Thank
have
you,
a
Bella.
great day, guys.
Appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.